Are you hearing anything feedback from my end?
Yeah, I can hear. I can hear whoever's back, but behind you or near you. Not
Gotcha.
not
Gotcha.
terribly loud, but it was
Okay.
like me yesterday. I was on this podcast show, and it was at 7 o'clock at night. So
Uh-huh.
usually things are, we don't have Amazon drivers arriving or anything like that, right? But it just so happened that my daughter and my husband kind of got in a little bit of a rift
Uh-huh.
in the hallway behind me. And then I'm like, like I'm literally in the interview, like, so I can't be like, shh, 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 you know? And then so that stops. About 10 minutes later, my husband's putting in this system in the back, and
Uh-huh.
he starts hammering, and it's right underneath my window. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, what's going on? So, they asked me after, he's like, could you hear us? Could you hear us outside? I'm like, and so you were also aware you were outside my door and beneath my window, but like it's life, I mean, I think with like being in quarantine now for, I mean, in some cases people still are,
Yes.
it's if we learned nothing, I think we've learned to just like roll with it, because it's
You
like when everything happens out of one area, you're kind of like, all right, like it
you
is what it is.
you have to roll, and I think we and that's what life should be. We should be water, right? And
Right.
not iron. We shouldn't be so restricted. I think I wrote something on my Facebook. One of my post was the plan, veering off the plan just might be the plan, right?
Yeah.
Because we how many who on earth should put up their lying hand to say that they never had to go off the beaten, that go off the so-called plan, and they ended up well on their dying bed. You know,
Yeah.
once we
Yeah.
can understand that piece, that the husband will be and the daughter will be outside the door doing something. He will be taking a hammer. My daughter would be on FaceTime with her friend after they've taken their PSATs and they're talking about it. Life isn't in a vacuum.
Yeah.
So if you hear somebody talking, now it's my daughter talking, y'all. So I'm not gonna apologize for that.
And if we came on 5 minutes late, it's because, some people had to get dressed. but
Ah,
but it must be something with the day, because like I was saying to you, I literally was in the midst of like putting together this, war and peace email.
uh-huh.
And I'm like, oh my God, 12:30. I'm not dressed. I'm still in my post workout look.
So you
That's
run
right.
and
So
get
I'm
ready in
in
30
the
minutes.
shower, out of the shower, like, I mean, all this. So
Mm.
I think it was just today, things happen and life happens, and here we are. And so how are
How
you, by the way?
you took it out of my mouth. You took it. I'm tired.
Yeah.
I'm tired, but tired from doing manual labor. Not tired from, season or anything. It's just I'm just fatigued from doing work around this house. My 2021 three pillars for 2021.
Mm-hmm.
One was focusing on God. Second was writing the books that He told me to write, and the third is to fix the house. And it's the fixing of the house that's making me tired. But He says you're doing this in love, and you have to rely on the Spirit. So I am finding out that when God gives you a mission, in the process of talking of operating in the mission, you will get tired. You will feel, gosh, I can't do this anymore. But it's His mission that He's given you, and He will give you the strength for it.
Mm-hmm.
Because after I get so tired, I go and I say, you know what, I need some rest. And He says, yeah, take a rest. I'm not a slave master. Take a rest.
You're the slave master.
I know, and I revive, and I keep on going. So that's what I'm fatigued about, but I'm good. I'm good. And I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna put them on mute and yell downstairs for a second because she's a bit loud. How are you?
I'm well. I read lips too, so that's good.
Shut it down. You were too loud for me.
I was like that
How
with
are
my
you?
daughter earlier too. When I was up here, I was just finished a client call, but she was listening to some video as she was doing an art project. Like they like to listen to stuff or what. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how they do it. They've got the video thing and they've got this thing. And I'm like, we have not evolved that far from the fact that we don't multitask well. I realize that you youngins think you can do a million things at once, and we probably don't do a great job of modeling the opposite for you. But I know you can't be focusing on one thing while you're trying to look at all these other things.
Thank you.
But that darn thing was so loud. I was like, these. I don't know if you've even seen them, but there are these influencers, and they do all sorts of things. And the ones she likes to watch are they're playing games. They're trying out games, and so they're kind of like talking about how the game works and the positives and negatives of the game and all that,
Right.
in this video. And this one, they're always yelling. Oh my God. I'm like,
Yes, yes.
how is that? Like, how you just listen to that in the background? Like, it's so relaxing. I mean, so she has
Amazing.
this thing up full volume and she's in the room and I can hear it, what sounds like full volume up in my office. And it's
Yes,
like, you
yes,
need to
yeah.
turn that thing down.
How do they do? So my son has a phone in front of him. The PS is on with watching there's another device. His iPad has a V pod going on about a game that he's looking at, and something is in his ear, has an earpiece in his ear. So that's how I just go in your room and just go boom, and he go I'm like, yeah, gotcha. But how are you doing today? How are you doing today, Traci?
I'm doing well. I mean, I can relate to the tired bit. I think it's not so much tired physically as you kind of nailed it when you were saying how, God's just like, yeah, follow my lead. And, I've had moments in the last couple of weeks that I've acknowledged that because sometimes we don't acknowledge it. Sometimes we just get to the end of the week and we're wiped out and we're just like, ooh, I don't even know why I'm so tired. I'm just tired.
Yep.
But a lot of, and I was having a client conversation actually this morning, but also yesterday with a different client about this very thing is, we're used to knowing based on proof. So this client was saying how he's done learning by trial and error, where he's like, it's almost like I have to try that. I know that thing is probably the thing that got me, but I've got to prove that that's either it or not it. And I'm going to throw myself into it again. And he gave me an example of his son, with this chicken, sweet and sour chicken thing that they had gotten from a Chinese restaurant. And his son ate it the first time and didn't feel so great the next day. So they're like, it was probably the chicken, but we're not real sure. So his son's like, well, I want to try it again to prove whether it was the chicken or not. It's
Correct.
like, do we really need to do that? And that's what he was saying. He goes, I'm watching my son do this. I'm telling my son, you really don't need to do that because, you don't really need to know. You just need to have gotten better. He's like, but I want to know if it was the chicken. And he says, and I realize I do the same thing.
Yeah.
It's all, I just have to prove it to myself. And this idea of head knowing, proof, the science, all of this, when most of the time we're just guinea pigging ourselves, so what I said to him is I said, we do have other ways of knowing. We have heart knowing and we have gut knowing. We have instinct. And we were talking about this one particular thing that he's like, I know, I knew. Because in that moment, my gut told me, don't do that. Don't do that. And I did it anyway, because I wanted to prove to myself that I could or whatever it was. And it goes, and it blew up in my face. And I knew it was going to blow up in my face. but he says, I'm done doing that.
Hmm.
And I think that at the same time, when we're in this transition of going from head knowing to heart and gut knowing and
Mm-hmm.
trusting that,
Mm-hmm.
it can actually be exhausting because we've
Mm.
been so primed to do it the other way,
Mm.
right? It's actually the easiest thing in the world. We listen to our hearts and our guts, and they'll tell us immediately, all we have to do is abide by it. But our heads are like, no,
Mm.
you got to prove it. No, you need the hard, cold facts. No, you need to,
Wow.
and so I think with me, there's been a lot of time kind of, I equate it to like figuring things out. It's like walking through a forest at night in the dark with no flashlight, and not just a forest you've never been in before.
Mm. Mm.
Right? So you're trying to navigate an environment that is foreign to you. You can't see where you're going. You
Mm-hmm.
don't have any ability to navigate other than through your other senses.
Wow.
And that can be exhausting when you have it. What the exhausting thing is the battling with the ego, which is in the head telling us, no, 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 you need a flashlight to do this,
There,
or this is not safe because you don't know where you are,
there you go.
or and just staying in this fear. That's what's exhausting.
That's you know what all I as you were saying this, so Jay Dwayne is on here. Hey Jay Dwayne, how are you
Hey,
doing? Good to
Jay.
see you. Bill Irwin, thank you for stopping by. And the other people, drop a comment in here. It's gonna buoy us up and let us remember we have a question from the last time
Oh, we
that we
did have a
didn't.
question
So
from last time.
I have it here. I will get to it, but let me think. Thank goodness I remembered, because as I was talking about comments, I remember the comment came from this gentleman from, I think, the last show, and we'll want to come back to it. But what you were saying, the Bible says a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. So
Mm.
you go here and then you go there, you go here and you go there, and you're so unsure. So you're thinking where now your spirit, so you said soul, your heart, your soul, your heart, your gut, etc. I would say your spirit keeps telling you to do something, but then the flesh, you're trying to depend on your experience, and you come in there and you can't exist in those two worlds. It's so
Mm.
hard. It's so hard to exist in those two worlds, because when you come from out of the cold and get in the hot in heat, and then you get back in the cold and then you get back in heat, what happens? There's a possibility you may get sick because your temperature keeps changing drastically.
Mm.
And or let's talk about the abuse, the guy who's kissing his wife and saying, I love you, I love you, I love you, then he hits her, then I love you, I love you. So it's a confusing state. So
Mhm.
let's think about your mind now, going from uh your I know this, and then your spirit is telling you something different. And I feel the most, though, of those two, the one that knows you best is your spirit.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a spirit
That's
that your spirit knows, and your spirit's connected to. So we're connected to God. We God the Father. When that spirit comes and tells you this is not, don't go test it out. Don't go prove it.
that's
Don't
the
don't
human.
don't prove gravity. Come on.
That's the human. And as I was talking to my clients, I'm like, but that's really, actually, if we want to look at it, it's an old paradigm. And the reason I know it's an aging paradigm is because we're finally saying we're done with it.
Yes.
If it weren't aging, if it was still applicable, we wouldn't be waking up to this idea that I don't want to do it that way anymore. Right. So what we're really ushering in and inviting in, and I think, to the point of what we're trying to make, hopefully we're making it clearly enough for people to follow,
No?
is that in the transition, it can be exhausting
Yes.
because, as we're kind of recognizing the ego has been playing a huge role in the old paradigm, the ego doesn't necessarily want to step down from its role. It doesn't necessarily want to step down from its kingdom, its
Mm,
reign.
mm.
um, and so that's where the challenge is, and that's where the exhaustion is because we're still vacillating between, am I still a caterpillar, or am I a butterfly yet? Am I a
Correct.
caterpillar, or am I a butterfly?
And
right?
mm,
And this transition, and that's what I'm feeling. I'm really feeling that, in transition. I think I talked about this before too. That's why they call that part of birthing transition, because it's the most painful part, the most exhausting part too. It takes the most effort to actually push the baby through the birth canal.
mm,
Um, and so,
mhm.
that's, I feel like that's where we are,
Yeah.
kind of collectively. And so whether we're finding it in our physical struggles or in our mental struggles or our emotional struggles or all of the above, the higher self is what I call my spirit self. My
Mhm.
higher self knows. My higher self's just like, let me know when you're ready. Let me
Yeah.
know, like, I'm over here, I'm always up here and always,
Yeah.
I know. Um, and how do I tap into that? And, I was sharing this with a client. I was watching this really interesting documentary called Superhuman.
Mm-hmm.
And, our governments, I mean, governments, not just the United States, but, governments have been using this technology and what's called our inner gadgetry for a long time in this way, where we can do this we can train ourselves to remotely view,
Mm-hmm.
which means we can see things. We can actually voyage through our inner sight and
Mm-hmm.
see things and spy, the spying programs. Used an example of, when we were in the Cold War time, our spies would do this remote viewing and see where, the USSR had their tanks or various things positioned. And then we were able to do, recon and that kind of thing. They found that that's exactly where these things were located. Right. So
Mm-hmm.
how do we do that? How do we go into foreign, we've never been there before, but we can get, so obviously we have this capability. And then they showed schools, there's various pockets of schools all over the world that have been training children to do
Mm-hmm.
this, and adults too, but we start with children because they're less conditioned
Mm-hmm.
than we are, as adults. And so they can tap into that inner gadgetry more. And you see these kids, they have these things called, and I'll show it to you. I have one. I'm starting to train myself. It's called a mindfold. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a total blackout blindfold. You can see nothing when you have this thing on. And they're training kids. They're riding bikes. They're reading books. They're playing chess. They're playing ping pong. They're doing all these things with these things on. How do they do that? It's because they're accessing their other states of sense, their sense perception, their
Mm-hmm.
knowing in other ways. And humans have this. It's just we've been trained out of it. We've been trained seeing as believing, right? And if we can't see it, touch it, it's not in our physical sense perception, then we have to have proof. That's what we're taught. But in reality, we don't. And I think that's the thing that, I'm starting to kind of wake up to, is like, how can I start to develop these senses within me? Because I know I already have certain of them
Uh-huh.
that I've trained, and that's how I do a lot of my work. Right. But what else? What other superpowers? They had people who were moving objects within a glass jar, right? And they were this thing on a spinner, and they were just intentioning with their energy that this thing start to spin, and sure enough, it starts to spin. So we can our mind control, so to speak, but it's not really mind control. It's our other sense control, if you want to look at it that way. Our ability to tap in through other means.
As you were talking, and people who are watching, there's multiple things. I would, your exhaustion as I have a feel. See, there that thing goes, the spiritual aspect. When I say I have a feeling, my spirit is picking up that there are people who are transitioning from the Sahara Desert into the tropical parts of Africa, right?
Hmm.
So if you look at the map of Africa and you see the Sahara, huge, taking the whole part of maybe kind of northwest, central, the whole strip, it's just white or ivory on the map, the satellite. And then you would see a transition into green as it goes further south. So west and south. It gets from ivory to green. But I want us to just look at the places where there's an ombre of ivory and green right in there. The gradient is, it's kind of, you can't tell if it's desert or if it's tropics. But if you just keep on walking, it becomes green
Mhm.
as you are transitioning. And I'm not saying you're in a sandy place or you're either in either or. The desert doesn't mean you're in a dry place in this conversation, in this instance. It's transitioning from using the eyes, your five senses, to trusting in your spirit as you are going in that gray area. Yes, I'll call it a gray area where you're like, "Ah, should I go desert or should I use the tropics?" The exhaustion exists, but please continue down the path, because when you look at the map, if you continue, you either will get in, I mean, hunter green, I mean, just forest green, or if you continue the other way, you will get in a complete ivory setting. Keep going, keep practicing, keep doing what God has called you here to do. One. The second one, that as you were talking, you spoke about trusting, trusting your spirit and not believing on on these physical, this, the physical world. Father God, help us in this conversation, because as we speak it, when some people may hear it and may not understand it, but I, yeah, you know what, Dwayne, I don't know if you put this down here for me, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to go. Dwayne just said, yes, trust your spirit. I'm just going to trust my spirit and ask God, to just explain it, because my motives aren't negative. My motives is based in love, as we're sharing what we're sharing here. The spiritual world is much more stronger than the physical world. One. And there are two spirits. There's the good and there's the evil. They're there, right? And they have power in this, on this physical, in this physical world. And some people may say, you know how if someone comes behind you now and you don't know they're there, the back of your hair, the hair on the back just stands. Why does that happen? Your natural spirit senses, and it does something in the physical to say, "Cook," and then you go, or you're sitting and your spirit senses something keeps staring at you. Something is staring, and you're like, somebody is staring at me. And then you turn, boom, there's that person just intently looking. Though it was a physical thing, but it was a spiritual connection. There was something going on.
Mhm.
Your spirit has more information than the physical. And as you were talking about training it, the way I train mine is by just, so it's a 2 a.m. getting up and sitting down, running to God and saying, Holy Spirit, I'm here. Show me what I don't know. The things that I see, there's a game being played on one level. There's a game being played. On one level, it shows X. On another level, it shows the cosine of the derivative to infinity of some calculus 3 formula that is using. It's the calculus 3 formula, God, that I want to see. I don't want to see the physical manifestation that your husband. I don't know why I'm going to husband and wives this today, but when the wife says something, she says this physically to you, but it's a spiritual connotation. May I see the spiritual connotation of my wife's, okay, that it's not okay to agree with me. There's something under there that's happening that I need to connect to and say, no, honey, hold up. There's something more to your okay, because there's something more to our wives to your okay, to your okay, you'll see, you get it. But that's on one level, but I want to see the spiritual implication of why you said that. So it's somebody who I am engaging with that cusses me up, and when they cuss me up, I want to know the calculus behind that. I don't want to come and hit the person, because when I do the math, and we're talking, you know how I'm talking it. When I do the math behind why they did it, I will not retaliate with abuse or with a curse. When my spirit knows what that is, I can easily go and say, "Can I give you a hug?" And they go, "What?" Yeah, because the calculus has shown the solution is you got a whole lot of hate in you, and all you need is love.
Hmm.
So the spirit world, especially being led by the right spirit, gives you so much ammo in this physical world that nothing really can stop you.
Hmm. Well, and another way of thinking about it too, for people who don't think in a from a spiritual standpoint, is it's all energy, right? If we look at energy, energy that's the one thing they've said doesn't change. So even as we
Mm,
pass from our living body into spirit, that's energy cannot be destroyed, right? Which means that is the through line, right? Is the energy. And so it's all energy, and
mm,
energy attracts in certain ways, right? There's all these laws of energy. And so when we look at it from an energy standpoint, how do we know when someone's standing behind us the energy we're picking up? And so energy also carries patterns and information. And that's, tapping into these particular things we can know. I mean, what I think is interesting is even in these, people keep, this word has been used a lot lately, science. The science. Okay, science is, well, you can look at medicine as a science. They say practicing medicine for a reason.
mm,
The reason things go through clinical trials is because they're testing it out. They don't know. They're trying to figure it out.
mhm, mhm.
And just as soon as they think they know, something else throws a monkey wrench in that, and they have to keep testing. We're practicing. That's true of everything. We don't, you say you play the piano, but you start by practicing. And even when you get to a certain level of expertise, you're always trying to challenge yourself to something greater. And so you're still practicing. So this concept of knowing, when people throw what the science says, or the news reports say, or my dad says, or my mom told me, or my grandfather, or the president of the United States, or what, we're all practicing, folks. Nobody has the hard, cold facts. Everybody has a version which is based on their perception. And even that is in process. So
Mm,
I think once we realize that, and we're like, okay, am I so focused on knowing and being right and being safe and being, in control? Because that's my ego.
mm,
That's not me. That's not my spiritual
mm,
higher self.
mm,
That's this conditioned body that we call the human existence that wants to find surety. And I'm here to say there's going to be a heck of a lot more of that if we start to be less focused on one thing, one answer, one right, one scientific fact, and start to recognize everything's in flow and process. Everything's constantly changing. And how can I learn to adapt to that? What mechanisms do I have internally and externally to help me navigate?
mm,
Right? If my boat goes out into the ocean and I lose my oars and I lose my sail, and I don't have the things I was sure I could help navigate myself through the ocean with,
mm,
what am I going to do?
mm, mm,
Right? And so that's the thing, is it's like, that's why we fight so hard to control things, because we fear that if they go away, we'll have no idea of how to navigate this thing called life. And that's just not true.
true. Thank you. Thank you. Ah, as you were, when you talked about practice, Ah, the and you know where I'm just coming from the Bible view when it comes to spirit or whatever, right? With so I'm not gonna apologize
Oh no, don't
to
apologize.
the
And I always bring
listeners.
in things in case there's, I'm the translator in
Correct
the
to
group. So I'm used to being like, how could other people be thinking about this?
the listeners, you know. Oh no, I'm not apologizing to you because you know it already. um, um, so you go you know you talk about healing, you know, people who go and you touch and you heal, and you know, you pray and you touch and you heal. So that's energy moving from me to you, right? Most people who are healing, they say, you know, heat comes through their hands, energy, and it transfers or they feel. Da, da, da. Now, if you're going through something that you have a gift and you don't practice it, the gift, you're not going to become better in it. So if it's a gift of prophecy, a gift of healing, a gift of doing whatever God has put you on this earth to do, and you say, oh, I got the gift, but you don't practice it, you are putting your ego, because you don't practice. Oh, here's why some people don't practice whatever they are doing. They don't practice it because the ego in them says, suppose I miss it, what happens then? I'm
Mm.
going to be looked on as a fool. And then we don't give grace, because in this world, we don't give grace to people who fail, right? We don't give grace to Traci, who says she's a mindset transformer, blah, blah, blah. You were practicing this thing, Traci. You're practicing this thing. Your total in 20 years, your 2021 self will look like a nursery teacher, a nursery student rather. You will look so juvenile based on where you are 20 years from now, and you will go, oh my goodness. And that 20 years from now, so God's willing, if you live for another 20, you would look at it and go, I didn't know crap. So give yourself grace.
Mhm.
Give yourself grace. And I'm going to bring our word. This eavesdrop has a word that makes all of us tear up in here: reverence. Give yourself, give others the grace and reverence where they are, because they don't know, because they do not know. Even if it's based on ego, even if it's based on pride or whatever, because you know, let it go, let it go. When I know that someone is cussing at me and doing stuff because they don't understand me, because they don't, do I get back and hit them? No, I practice this thing that I have been practicing forgiveness and understanding the calculus behind it, and go, Mary really doesn't understand me. One, Mary doesn't have enough information. Mary is basing X on this. So you know what, Mary? I want to give you the grace right now. I want to give you the grace, and in your ignorance, in your ignorance, because I know you know the person is ignorant. Why do you go and run behind? You know, there's a saying in Liberia: if a dog bites you, do you go and bite the dog back? So imagine you seeing the dog bite a man, a grown man, and the man runs behind the dog, if the dog bit him on the ankle, he goes to the dog's ankle and says, I'm going to bite you just where, and dog like, who looks stupid? It's the guy. It's the guy who ran behind the dog to bite the dog, right? So the person who's abusing you with ignorance, and you go back and you say, well, you don't know me, blah, 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 or you don't know how I consult, you don't know how I work with visionaries, you don't know how I minister, you don't know how, but because of the limited view of, oh, something's coming, you are growing in your work, you are growing in your work, and then meet you here. And where you're going to is way up north. And then meet you right here on I-95 South, and you're going way up I-95 North, and then make a decision based on where they met you on I-95 South. And they're like, man, you want to go and spend your time knowing that you're going up to Maine. and you're still in Florida, and you want to spend your time talking to this person in Florida that, oh no, I'm a visionary. My name is Traci, or I'm Wulwyn Porte. You want to prove to this person who doesn't give you the grace and reverence that you're on a road that you're practicing, and spend your time with them. Ignore those naysayers, or the people call them haters. Ignore those naysayers. Continue practicing. When you do get up in mean, and they're looking for the next person at the exit to see who they can talk to and say, oh, you are wrong, you're wrong. As you rise and they stay there, be kind of gracious when you come back to visit Florida. Don't waste any dirty water on them in your car.
I love these analogies. They're classic. I mean, I think that dog one is going to stay with me for a long time. You know, I really think that was beautiful.
You can't go and bite a dog.
No, and I think that at the same time, in the time that we're in, you know, what happens when we become so reliant on the outside world to feed us the information that we tell ourselves that now we feel secure because we quote unquote know, we're in the know, we stop using the muscle that is called reasonable thinking, right? Reasoning. When we lose the muscle of reasoning, it means we're taking all we have left then is to absorb the information at face value. So you tell me something, and when I have reasoning, I can take that information and process it through my filters of reasoning and say, okay, what makes sense within this to me? But when I lose that ability, then when you're telling me things, the only thing I have a bit available to me is to just absorb what you're saying at face value. And that's why I think so many people have done, and you know, not only the amount of information being thrown at us, the constantly changing information that's thrown at us, but the kind of way in which it's thrown at us. You need to know this. This is fact. This is science. This is whatever, fill in the blank. We can only take it in, absorb it, and react to it. When we reason, we don't have to react. We can respond. When people say, respond, don't react. Well, the difference, I want to explain the difference here, because that sounds great. That's like when people tell people, have grace and reverence. Okay, how do I do that? Right? The how is important.
Yeah.
Right? So the reason why we react instead of responding is because we have this jellyfish muscle of reasoning. We haven't strengthened it enough by continuing to use it to step back and say, wait a minute, use all of our senses of perception to work through that information. And first of all, determine whether it seems true to us or not. I mean, we're just absorbing it. Now it's in our system. And internally, we're just reacting to it.
Wow.
We can't respond because we have no distance of being able to sit back and contemplate whether that actually works, to process it through our various filters. We've already absorbed it. Right? So that's what I just want people to like, just listen to what you're being told and process it through what makes sense to you. And then if that's different from someone else, have grace and reverence for their differentness, for their different way of reasoning. And maybe they're not reasoning. Even if they're not, to the point Wulwyn's making, still give them grace and reverence. But it also, remember, there's such thing as boundaries, right? We don't have to accept certain types of behavior just because someone's ignorant.
Yes. Yeah.
We don't have to accept certain things being thrown at us just because people say that's what you're supposed to do.
Correct.
If you don't feel it's right, if you don't go by what is true for you, that is where things go wrong. That's where we leave our lane. And if we're thinking about the analogies, because analogies are flying around everywhere today, going down the highway, what happens when we swerve out of our lane? It usually causes an accident. Right? Something not so good usually happens. So staying in our lane means we really need to be able to reason with that information. And if it's coming too fast and furious, put yourself in a situation where you can process it. Wow. You don't have to take it in fast and furious. You don't have to drink from a fire hose. Turn off the news. Turn off the social media. Stop talking to your neighbor who wants to tell you this, that, and the other thing all the time. Give yourself a break, like Wulwyn said, take a rest.
Like,
But don't just start to take it in and absorb it because you're so exhausted by how much there is of it and how confusing it is. And stop thinking, stop reasoning. Don't do that. Because as soon as you do that, you're going to end up somewhere where you're like, how the heck did I get here?
so,
Right?
so let me, so for those of you who are watching and may not know, when I close my eyes on here, I'm not sleeping. I'm doing exactly what Traci is doing. It may come as a fire hose, what she's saying, but I'm processing and really just creating creating foundations in my mind that enables me to anchor when something occurs. So here's the foundation I'm building in my mind, Traci, and I wrote these things down. It comes through my ear gate. When it comes through my ear gate, I don't absorb. The filter is not there to reason. My reason filter is removed. I absorb it completely to my brain. And when it gets in my brain tells my body or my mouth what to do and say. That's taking what's coming to me, absorbing it and reacting. What we have to do is when we hear it, our filters, our processors are there to reason, put a filter there and reason it, this thing right, wrong, whatever it is. And then you make the decision, and that decision is not a reaction, it's a respond to what you have processed and what you have reasoned based on what you heard.
Yes, and reasoning isn't just in the head brain, right?
Mm.
I mean, there's things that I can tell people I know are not true for me, and I can't explain it to you through
Mm-hmm.
my head brain. People say, how do you know it's not true? I don't know. I just sense it isn't true for me. And so reasoning isn't just, when I'm saying reasoning, I don't just mean head brain reasoning. How do I feel about it? That's heart brain reasoning.
Mm-hmm.
What is my gut telling me? Like,
Yeah.
woo, that's making me feel really uncomfy,
Yes.
as my daughter would say. You know, that's gut brain reasoning. You know, but it's pass it through your filters, pass it through your all your brains.
But
Right? Because this one's going to only be aligned to what other people have told you and what you've experienced out in the world. Right?
and,
And not
and
to say that's not valuable, but it's not the only thing that's valuable.
but and in addition to that, when you say come let us reason together, it's also speaking back to the person and saying what did you mean, unpacking. Oh, as my daughter's kindergarten teacher, or I think second grade teacher, stuck in my brain. She said she would tell Jazz, use your words, pop that kernel, Jazz, pop that kernel, so that I can see the beautiful poof come out. So when the person gives you, or when, why no, it's not only a person. When the world, when whatever comes at you, if it's a person, you reason, as we said, all the different mechanisms you have, all the different tools you have to use. Some will be verbal, some will just be brain, some will be your heart, some will be your spirit, some, and I hit the printer, some will be other things, everything that you have in your power to process. In this case, let's talk about a human who says something to you and you, can you unpack that for me? Can you tell me what do you mean by that? And that's reasoning in that sense. And when you reason, instead of reacting to the person who meant something completely different, but because you did not reason with them to understand, you go pop, 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 and then there's a disintegration of humankind, if I may say. Ah, Traci,
I
Traci,
love that. So would it be a good time to segue into the question from last time?
Traci, you are so astute. So
I
astute,
felt that.
so astute of you. So it was for next week. Can we address a point where that, I'm just going to read it and then we'll get what it was about. For next week, can we address a point where that drive does not put our partner in a position of not doing enough? I need a clearer picture than these value-driven forces. I need a clearer picture that these value-driven forces do not clash. Now, if I remembered for next week, can we address a point where that drive? So the drive we're talking about, your eternal drive to become better, improving yourself, right? Where that improvement does not put your partner in a position of looking like, gosh, you're putting me and I am going to go in a corner you remember that question, right? Okay.
I'm shaking my head because there is a big difference between you hurt me and I am hurt. You can't put anyone in a corner.
Whew.
And that's the distinction I want to make when it comes to any kind of relationships, is that it is not my job to see to your needs. It is your job to see to your needs. I can be here to support. I can be here to challenge. I can be here to share a life with you. But I cannot make this any more clear. When we put ourselves on hold for other people, we are not serving anyone. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't communicate, right? So this is the thing. There's the what, and then there's the how. If the what is growth, and we need to grow, and we assess that means X, Y, and Z for us, and our partner, say this is a romantic relationship, our partner is saying, but that's not good for me. You going off and doing X, Y, and Z or doing it in that way is not good for me. I need you to be doing this for me to feel comfortable in this relationship. When you do that, it makes me feel this way. That's not my responsibility, how that person is feeling. It is my responsibility to go and to hear that communication, to consider that, and to communicate the importance of where I'm coming from. That person then can decide to jump on board or not. You know, I can maybe rethink it, like, okay, I realized originally I was going to do it exactly like this. But now that you said that, I can still get there, but I can go this way and incorporate what you need.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it doesn't mean we don't take account of how we're going to get there. Kind of like when you were talking about traveling, right? Is that there's more than one way to get to Rome. And so it's really about, again, communicating that. But there's a difference between me doing that I just explained, and me doing it from this internal place of, oh, I can't do that because it would make my husband or wife feel, or I'm responsible if I can't hurt their feelings, or this would put them. No. No. And this is not selfish. This is about knowing thyself, knowing thy mission, knowing thy purpose, and being true to it, and communicating and working with people, but not taking on the responsibility of making it okay for them. I said to my daughter just the other day, I said, it is not your job to make others okay with you. It's your job to be you. You do need to communicate that with the people who you care enough about to communicate that with. And you do need to listen to their feedback, right? That's very important in relationships, is not only to speak, but to listen. But this whole concept, you know what that is? It's codependency. Is where we're like, I'm doing this because my husband wants me to. I don't really want to. It's like, did you communicate that? First of all, no, it's okay. Well, clearly it's not okay because you're telling me about it. So don't try to convince yourself it's okay when it's not. You get to take the responsibility and not just change your needs based on someone else's. That doesn't serve anybody.
So completely understand that. And I think from this question also, it's what's the motive in the relationship, right? And I think we talked about when you're in a relationship, and if it's obligatory, then every decision from that point, it's out of obligation and not out of love. Or so whatever the relationship was born of, it will continue in that vein. I think it's all up. If I'm in a relationship, because this question was with a partner, you're in a relationship, we're looking to grow this relationship, and it's growing physically, lovingly, financially, etc. That when I have to go and do X, understand that it's not about Wulwyn, it's not about Traci, it's about Traci and her partner, it's about Wulwyn and his partner, that we will grow. Me doing this is not, I'm not on a single track. There's a double track with you and I on it as one. So if you misunderstand that it's me doing what I'm doing is going to put you in a corner, you have a misunderstanding of the relationship, or we did not come into this relationship the proper way of understanding that we are one and we are going to grow together. So I think the fundamentals it's always in the fundamentals. It's in the conversation when you're starting these relationships. What is it that you want to become? What do you want to do? How do you want to do it? What do you want to become? Not what do we, what we want to become. We want to become this, but you are an individual in this relationship. So tell me your dreams. I can support your dreams. I'm going to tell you my dreams. You can support mine. And when we put those two dreams together, hey, we are growing. So
We're growing the relationship. And I think that's
correct.
what I always tell people is, instead of facing each other and having it about, this, I'm telling this to you and you're telling this to me, and we're trying to, make this work between us.
Mm-hmm.
It's about thinking about the relationship as a third party. It's we're feeding into the account that is the relationship. We're building this to build the relationship, because we're two pillars of the relationship, right? And
I
we
like
are a
that.
team. We're not the same person. We're individuals with individual needs, individual purposes, and individual missions,
I like that.
right? And so if we can't work together as a team, we also need to decide what we're going to do about that. I think there's just so many hard, fast rules that we've been taught that as soon as you enter a team, you can't give up on it. And I trust me, I've talked to so many clients. They're like, but I can't quit this team, even though it's not the team I want to be on anymore, because I'm committed. I need to stay committed. And I'm like, well, what is it costing you?
Yeah.
And what is it costing the team? Because if you're there, like to your point, out of obligation, or because you're told you can't leave the team, the rule is once you're in that team, you're committed to that team for life. What does that really do? Are you showing up with your best goods? Are you showing up in your best way? Are you because you're showing up in a sacrificial way, which I'll tell you one thing has never benefited any team.
Yes.
Right? It doesn't get the best juice from a sacrificial lamb. Right? So that's the piece that we really want to look at, is that where am I sacrificing? Because, it's like that conversation I had with the client who he's like, my success model is knowing I need to sacrifice these things about myself. And I go, I can tell you it's not successful. Your body is sick. That's not success.
Yeah.
Right. So we need to stop and consider how we are defining relationships, engagements,
Yeah.
dynamics, teams, commitment, purpose, all of these things, because nothing should be taking a back burner. It doesn't mean we don't need to maybe reconfigure to make it all work. That's the work. But nothing should be taking a back burner. It's not like everything will be on stage at once. It's when we watch a play, not all the players are on stage at once, but the players are still a part of the play.
Yes. Yeah.
Nobody's casting them out unless they die or something happens in the play, right? They're still present, even though they're not on stage.
Right.
That's what I mean by everything shouldn't get a backseat, right? Everything is significant. All the players in the play make the play what it is.
Correct.
They're all significant players, right? Just because they're not all on stage at once doesn't mean that they're cast aside. So that's how I want, I think when I talk to people, I want people to start to consider that there is a huge difference between you don't like my decision, right? And I did this to you. I'm doing this to you. I'm not taking care of you. Well, where are you taking care of you? Right? I mean, the committed part of relationships is, yes, we're here to help support one another, but it is not my job to take care of you. There's a difference. There's a subtle but very distinctive difference. Right? Now, obviously, if you can't care for your legitimately can't care for yourself, you have an accident or an illness or whatever, that's different. That's not what I'm talking about here.
The you know, we're coming to the bottom rather. I think we need to take inventory of everything that we're engaging in: relationship, business, family, etc. All of these different things are so important in order for our wheel of life to have the air in it, right? In order for it to go smoothly. The goal is inventory. Why am I in this relationship? Why am I in this business relationship? Why am I in this loving relationship?
Yes.
Why?
Why?
And really, if your answer, your true answer, your spirit answer, the answer that your spirit gets, go with that answer, really. And your spirit never lies. It never lies. It never lies to you. It's so
Never.
true.
It's so true.
Yo,
And it's okay to let go. I've seen so many people not be able to let go of relationships, of businesses, a failed business, and they're still
yeah,
clinging to the fact that they were this business owner. It's like that business failed 20 years ago.
thunk.
No, you're not the business owner to that business anymore. Right? And
Mm,
so let's access it, to your point,
mm,
for right now, not why you got into it to begin
yeah,
with,
yeah,
or what it might have done for you in the past, but why are you engaged in these things now, moving forward? And how is that aligned with the life? And hopefully you're taking count of the life you want to be living,
yes,
that
yes.
it's intentional and not accidental. If not,
Oh,
I've got a great exercise for you. But that's the thing, is I love that why am I doing this? Why am I
why?
saying this?
Why?
Why am I practicing this? Why am I choosing to feed myself with this piece of food or information or person?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Ah, Tracy, thank you so much. It's been a long 2 weeks waiting for this.
Mm,
I truly enjoyed it, and I look to talking more in the next 2 weeks. Listeners, viewers, thank you so much. We truly appreciate you.
yes. Thank you.
You guys take care. Bye bye.